You see my screen?
You're up.
Yep, and we are live on YouTube.
And Commissioner Gallagher has arrived.
Awesome. Just promoted him. All right, welcome. All right, go ahead and get started. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I now call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Welcome to ANC 1E's July General Body Meeting. A few administrative notes. Today's meeting is being recorded. Closed caption is available for each user by clicking the button on the toolbar below. Please submit questions through the Q&A function located on the toolbar below as well. If you're calling in rather than participating through the web, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. We'll be monitoring questions throughout the meeting. I will now ask Secretary Jacobson to please conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Footer. I will now conduct the roll. Commissioner Gallagher?
Present.
Commissioner Lancaster? I do not see Commissioner Lancaster in the attendees or the panelists. Commissioner Ray?
Present.
Commissioner Brown?
Present.
Commissioner Newland?
Present.
Commissioner Jacobson? Present. And Chair Footer?
Present.
All right, with 6 of 7 seated commissioners in attendance, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Now on to administrative matters. Per DC law, the ANC 1E meeting was noticed to the community via listserv, social media, website, and e-calendar. Moving to the approval of the agenda, I will quickly read through the agenda. We have the consent agenda, which I will read those items when we get to it in a moment. Then we'll move on to community announcements, which we don't have any special guests this evening, so we will go through our normal courses of action, which I will read those instructions when we get there as well. Under official business, we have for today 7 resolutions, 2 of which are under the Transportation and Public Space Committee, 3 of which are under Zoning and Economic Development Committee, and then 2 of which are under the Public Safety and Engagement Committee. And with no other business listed here, we would adjourn the meeting. So with that, are there any additions or amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll now accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we approve the agenda.
Great. Is there any dissent? All right. Hearing none, the motion passes and the agenda is adopted. Thank you very much. Next, we will move to the consent agenda. Just a reminder, all matters listed under consent are considered by the commission to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any commissioner may, however, remove an item from the consent agenda by request. The consent agenda today includes the approval of the June 2023 ANC 1E public meeting minutes, approval of ANC 1E quarterly financial report for fiscal year 23, quarter 2 and quarter 3, the approval of SOP language around individual commissioners responding to DPR applications for amplified noise. Are there any edits to the agenda, consent agenda? Or anything people want to move to official business for further discussion? Hearing none, I'll now accept a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the consent agenda.
Great. Any dissent? All right, hearing none, the motion passes and the matters listed are adopted. We are moving right along, my friends. All right, now community announcements and presentations. Commissioners and members of the community can use this time to make public announcements, distribute information, and alert the community about issues. For members of the public, if you are here to discuss an item listed under official business, please hold your comments until we get to that item on the agenda. We will start the community announcements with commissioners, then move to the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services, also known as MOCRS, then the representative from Councilmember Brianna Nadeau's office, then members of the public. All speakers have 3 minutes. For members of the public, please indicate you'd like to speak by raising your hand and using the button on the toolbar below. If you're calling in rather than participating online, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. I'll call on members of the public in the order that you raise your hand. All right, so I see that we're starting with commissioners. Our first is Commissioner Ray. Please, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that the community is getting early warning that Open Streets is coming up on October the 7th. That's a Saturday. This will probably, I think, be our 4th Open Streets. So DDOT is coordinating with the local businesses for activation, and they've also reached out to the ANC. So if you are a local business and want to get in touch with DDOT, we can help you to do that. Or if you're a local organization that would like to do something to activate a space for Open Streets, as you know, it closes Georgia Avenue to car and vehicle traffic in order for it to be open for walking, running, biking, scooting, all those kinds of more outdoor physical activities. So we look forward to it every year now, and want to make sure people are well aware in advance that it will be in October, that first Saturday in October. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we have Commissioner Jacobson. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Footer. A couple of quick announcements. First, there are several locations around ANC 1E that will be getting sidewalks repaired. Super excited to see that. I put in a lot of requests last year, and there's a good portion near Chair Footer in my districts that will be fixed. So that'll be great for mobility in the area. And then the second thing is I'm working with some neighbors on Euclid Street who are interested in throwing a block party. So if there's anyone on the line that lives on the 700 block of Euclid that wants to get involved, please let me know. We'll be collecting signatures over the next month or so. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other commissioners have announcements that they would like to make? All right, I have 2 quick ones. This past week, or within the last 2 weeks, I had a conversation with an organization known as Crown that does wireless infrastructure. They're a wireless infrastructure company, and they are going to be submitting an application to expand fiber cables and small cells for mobile phone capacity on Berry Street. I've directed them to Commissioner Jacobson's Transportation and Public Space Committee because it is something that will go through public space as they are trying to install a new pole on a sidewalk. So that's one thing. Excited about that and bringing that to our neighborhood. And then second, I want to just publicly thank Howard University for hosting a conversation yesterday with impacted community members around a proposed map amendment. I just really appreciate you guys being very transparent about it and giving us the opportunity to share information with the community early and often. After the conversation, we advised that we have Howard University come to the Zoning and Economic Development Committee when they are prepared, which is looking like it would be September when we get back. And so more details to come with that, but exciting things on the horizon. That is all that I have. All right. Next, we will move on to Portia Foreman with the MOCRS. Do we have Portia with us tonight?
I do not see Portia in the attendee list.
All right, I do not either. So we will go over to representative from Councilmember Brianna Nadeau's office, which is Kevin Pham. And I don't see Kevin either. Do we have Kevin?
I also do not see Kevin, but if either Kevin or Portia in the audience and we don't see it, please raise your hand.
All right, well, we'll follow up with them, and if they have any important information they need to provide, we'll make sure to pass it around to commissioners and the public as necessary. All right, next we will move on to members of the public. If you are interested in giving a community announcement, please raise your hand. Again, if you are calling in rather than participating on the web, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. All right, seeing none, we will move right along. All right, so moving on to official business and committee updates. Official business is organized into our 3 standing committees. The committee chairs will begin by providing a brief update on their committee's activities from July. And then they will walk through each item of business and have 5 minutes per item to present. They'll take questions from commissioners and then members of the audience or the public. We will do that until a motion is proposed. If we do, I know that we have a couple of people with us today that are interested in talking about a resolution or two. When we call upon members of the public, you will have 5 minutes if you are coming to make a statement to address the commission. I do want to just state that it is not a method for debate, so I will be very limiting on what kind of back and forth we have. And that really it's an opportunity for members of the commission to propose questions and answer kind of feedback as they see fit. Commissioner Jacobson, yes.
Just a point of clarification, I think we limited the presenter to 5 minutes and then community comment to somewhere between 1 to 3 minutes and not the full 5 minutes.
I do not remember that. Community announcements was 3 minutes, but debate, as per the commissioners having 5 minutes to present, is we afford the same opportunity for members of the public.
Okay.
Okay. So with that, I will kick it over to Commissioner Jacobson with the Transportation and Public Space Committee. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Footer. A couple of quick updates from the Transportation and Public Space Committee. We met earlier this month to talk about a couple of resolutions. So we heard a presentation around a public space application for the redevelopment around the McDonald's site. So the short version of it is that the committee recommended the full ANC approve the public space application with a couple of caveats. The first is we want a clear understanding on what the plans are to utilize sidewalk cafes in the public space going forward once they complete that development. We are supportive of sidewalk cafes, but would like to see some more clarity on the long-term plans for the space. And then the second is, given that the Bryan Street Northwest extension is intended to be pedestrian friendly, we'd like to see some more specifics around traffic calming measures at the entrance of Bryan Street, where Bryan Street and Georgia intersect for this development, and along that length of Bryan Streets. We had previously passed a resolution around bike lanes along Bryan Street. So asking if they could incorporate some sort of protected bike lane along that. And then a better understanding of any long-term solutions that they plan to implement to quickly close the street to vehicular traffic during public events, such as bollards. For some context here, open streets events tend to be very expensive. A lot of that expense is due to needing to pay MPD overtime to park their cars along the entrances to Georgia and other streets. And having other methods of closing the street that don't require police vehicles and dump trucks and things like that would significantly reduce the cost and make it easier to hold events like that in the future. And so that's why we commented that. Any questions from commissioners? All right.
None. Commissioner, would you like to go through each of your resolutions and then take questions from the community, or do you want to do them individually?
Go through each of the resolutions. That works.
Say it again.
We can go through each. We can go through the entirety of the resolutions that the committee passed, and then take questions from the public, and then talk about motions. So the second resolution, this is around vehicles that frequently speed throughout the city. So it is a letter calling for DPW to essentially create a hot list of vehicles that have over $1,000 in speeding fines, and target those for being booted or towed. The primary driver here is that the streets in DC are not very safe when it comes to vehicular traffic and the dangers to pedestrians, bicyclists, people with disabilities, and other folks that are driving their vehicles. And we think that more needs to be done to improve safety in the region. One way to do that would be to take these vehicles that are contributing to the most dangerous driving, which is those that are speeding frequently, and targeting those vehicles for being booted and towed. This doesn't just impact DC vehicles, obviously. Any vehicle that's in the city that has more than $1,000 in tickets would be eligible under this proposal to be booted or towed. It may be more difficult to find those vehicles, but it is something that could be done. And that is essentially it for this resolution. Any questions from commissioners or comments?
I do have a quick comment on this, but looking if others want to ask a question or have a comment before I do. Awesome. I do just want to point out that I did originally have some concern just about what this may do to some of the efforts that the city has gone through over the past 2 or 3 years with trying to not punish low economic individuals who have experienced an excessive amount of targeted parking violations. There were a number of Washington Post stories about people that became homeless, people who have tried to get onto payment plans, things of that nature. The reason why I think that this is not really impacting those efforts is that this is really focused on the speed portion of it, and focusing on how speed cameras and things of that nature are really the driving force for some of the safety that pedestrians deal with, and not looking at people who have like parking violations. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Chair Footer. And to be perfectly honest, I wish there was some authority for vehicles that were speeding and paying their fines, but DPW has no legal authority to boot and tow those vehicles, and has no legal authority to require remedial training for folks who do that frequently. So this is just the current avenue that exists that DPW would have legal authority to implement if there was the will.
All right. Any questions or other comments from commissioners? Yes,
And just
Mr. Gallagher. Sorry, one second, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Gallagher, go ahead.
Actually, I defer to Commissioner Brown if she would like to speak first.
Commissioner Brown.
thank you. And I just echo Chair Footer's comments about the equity piece. When I was reading kind of the second paragraph, I get it, but also that there are just economic disparities in those words as well. And that, the mayor's office is trying to kind of come up with a balance between addressing speed and fines, the issue of fines and fees. So I just kind of want to be careful about the wording there, and maybe if we can kind of call that out or just make a statement that kind of recognizes what Chair Footer had mentioned, and that that the kind of needs of low-income individuals who cannot afford these fees, that they come up with some strategies or solutions to address that particular issue.
Yeah, I'd be fine including some language in there. Do you have like a sentence that you can think of that we can put in there?
Yeah, why don't we kind of, Chair Footer, you and I and Commissioner Jacobson work offline? If that's okay.
I'm okay with that. I don't think you would change adding a sentence in here around that would change the nature of this. So if people are okay with still addressing this tonight or voting on it and adding a sentence around socioeconomic impacts and the balance therein. Okay. Commissioner Gallagher, did you have anything that you wanted to mention? I saw your hand was up before.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Footer. Yeah, I just wanted to, as I always do, thank Commissioner Jacobson for this very thoughtful public safety related proposal. I think it dovetails nicely with this body's previous resolution encouraging the mayor and council to enact and enforce the existing laws regarding unsafe driving that we previously passed, and that council member Nadeau and others, I think, largely captured the spirit of in some of the draft legislation that soon will be pending before the council. And then also, as I often do, also wanted to thank Commissioner Brown for bringing up the equity issues in this issue and many others that this body considers. So thanks to you both for your diligent work.
Great. All right. We will now turn to, or I'm sorry, are there any other questions or comments from commissioners before we turn to the community? All right, seeing none. We'll now turn to members of the community. If you have any questions or comments with respect to, and I'm going to pull the agenda up so you can see both of them at the same time. My screen is frozen. Can you see the agenda now?
Yes.
Perfect. Members of the community, if you have any questions, comments with respect to the resolution around public space or the letter around booting and towing vehicles with over $1,000 in speeding fines, please raise your hand. Again, if you are calling in rather than participating online, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. All right, seeing none, I will now accept a motion. We'll take these one at a time. So with respect to the first resolution, a resolution supporting Howard University's public space application with caveats, I'll take a motion on that resolution.
I motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the resolution as written.
Any dissent? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. Next, on The next thing under consideration is the letter calling for DPW to boot and tow vehicles with over $1,000 in speeding fines. Is there a motion?
I make a motion with unanimous consent to adopt the resolution as written, adopt the resolution, provided that we add in a sentence around the impact on socioeconomic equity.
Perfect. Any dissent? Hearing none, the motion passes and the letter is adopted.
And the last
Right.
thing I will mention is just that our next meeting is Wednesday, September 6th at 7 p.m. More details can be found on ANC 1E's website. We have a couple of presentations already lined up, so that should be exciting. And we are taking the month of August off, to be perfectly clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. I am going to go a little bit out of order. We now have the representative from Councilmember Brian Nadeau's office, Kevin Pham, with us, and I do want to give him the opportunity to speak. So if we could bring him up, and we will just go back to the community announcements for just a moment, that would be great.
I have promoted him.
Great. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, commissioners. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes to speak. I apologize for showing up late. I had some other affairs I was attending to, but I wanted to take a few minutes to speak about some legislation that the council member introduced, and I think it's very relevant to the resolution that y'all just passed. But recently, the council member introduced legislation to address the proliferation of long expired and counterfeit temporary vehicle plates, in addition to vehicles with plates that are intentionally obscured to avoid automatic enforcement. This legislation gives the Department of Public Works and other enforcement agencies authority to immediately toll and impound cars whose owners have blatantly disregarded the law by having clearly counterfeit, obscured, or long expired plates. Under current law, even a vehicle with no license plate cannot be towed unless it has 2 or more unpaid tickets. So this particular legislation would empower DC government to proactively investigate and shut down dealers and distributors of falsified and counterfeit temporary tags, classifying that as an act of forgery. This legislation is called the Fraudulent Vehicle Tag Enforcement Amendment Act of 2023, and it was co-introduced along with Councilmember Alan Henderson, Freeman, Pinto, and Louis George. In addition to this legislation, Councilmember Allen also has a proposed bill which would prioritize enforcement for reckless driving. Legislation from Councilmember Henderson would assign license plate or license points to automated traffic enforcement tickets, and immediately suspend license for drivers who are charged with vehicular deaths, hit and runs, or intoxicated driving. And Councilmember Nadeau has signed on as a co-introducer to these other pieces of legislation. Councilmember Nadeau's bill would also require the mayor to maintain a directory to help enforcement agencies identify legitimate and fraudulent tags from around the country, requiring for enforcement agencies what is already expected of bars. So the legislation will be referred to a committee or committees for consideration after the council returns from recess in mid-September. And that's all I want to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Gallagher.
Hey, Kevin, thanks so much for coming to address us. I also wanted to, on this specific piece of legislation, as I mentioned before, really wanted to thank the council member for and her group of co-introducers for working on this legislation. I think it hits almost all of the points that I feel like personally I've identified with the proliferation of this problem in recent years, and happy to lend a hand wherever possible. As probably the foremost expert on license plates residing in the District of Columbia, I'm happy to consult on that directory of fake tags. I would say if it's Texas, it's probably fake. That's probably the #1 rule. So again, thank you and the council member for your work on this issue.
Great, thank you. And we'll definitely reach out to you if you're interested in testifying when the bill is in front of a committee or various committees.
I am absolutely interested in testifying. This is my #1 issue, and I have felt like I've been screaming into the wind on it in recent years, photographing hundreds, thousands of these fakes. I've got the receipts to prove what the lawbreakers are doing out there. Let me know when and where, and I will talk to anyone about this issue. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobson.
I was just going to add, Kevin, if you could add me to the list to be notified when the signups go out, I would also be happy to. And if you have a rough sense of when that testimony might happen, we might be able to work as a commission to draft up more formal remarks and give approval for a member of the commission to give those at the hearing.
Great, that sounds good. Thank you. Reminding y'all that this legislation probably won't be up for consideration until the return of recess in mid-September, but I'll flag it for the legislative team that ANC 1A is interested in being more involved in this piece of legislation.
And 1E.
Great. Sorry, 1E, yes.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Kevin? All right, hearing none. Kevin, thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us tonight.
Great, thank you.
All right. So we will go back down to official business. Next, we will go to Zoning and Economic Development Committee. Commissioner Gallagher, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks, Chair Footer. The one thing I do want to flag for the commission and for the public, that unlike this body, the Zoning and Economic Development Committee will meet next month in August. That's August 9th, also at 7 p.m. I think we'll have a pretty full agenda. We want to get some cases heard before the applicants are due before the Board of Zoning Adjustment or the Zoning Commission. That said, I was unfortunately in the Arctic Circle during the last meeting of the committee, and Commissioner Ray nobly stepped in to chair that. So I will defer to him to provide this group an update on the last Zoning and Economic Development Committee meeting.
Thank you. Happy to do it. Always a pleasure to sit in. We had 3 agenda topics that evening. 2 of them are on the agenda for this evening, so I won't belabor that, but the vacant and blighted properties resolution and the resolution around the boundary lines for Lower George Avenue Main Street did go through markup through the committee and received support to move forward from the committee to move to here. So we'll introduce those later. However, I did want to give a brief update on a zoning case involving Howard University and the current vacant lot where the Enterprise Rent-A-Car used to reside is slated to be used as a temporary catering location while they are working on their current catering location being redeveloped. However, they have hit a snag with DDOT. If you've been to that site, there are 2 curb cuts going into the location. DDOT would like them to no longer use those curb cuts and would rather they use the alley. However, they're finding the alley to be a difficult way to get in and out for the vehicles that they would need to use at a catering location. So that the last or at the update that we received, they are proposing to include a new curb cut along the side street, which would be Girard. And have that be the access point instead of off of Georgia Avenue. So DDOT engineers are currently reviewing that suggestion to see whether or not it could move forward. If for some reason that does not work, there's a very good chance that that will no longer be the site of the catering location. So we will update the community when we know more. And if there is an update to the case, then we'll rehear it at a committee meeting so that the community can see how they want to move it forward. But that being said, I'll go back.
Commissioner Ray,
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
do you mind if I rudely interrupt for 1 second? I actually just received an update from Howard University, the applicant of that case, that that the Board of Zoning Adjustment has granted Howard's request to present to the BZA on November 29th. So I suppose that means we would want to hear that case in our September or in our September meeting. So more to come on that.
I agree. If that is assuming that DDOT, they reach agreement with DDOT. So if they don't reach agreement with DDOT, I think they'll simply cancel the case. But we'll see. And this was something that the community is pretty involved in. So we will want to make sure that they are aware. But yes. Anyway, then the vacant and blighted properties resolution was introduced by Chair Footer. So I will turn the tables over to him and then he can introduce.
Great. Thank you. So there's a lot of content in here, and I know that we've talked about it already. So I'm going to give a very brief overview. This is a resolution that came to us as a partnership with ANC 1A, and a number of other ANCs are going to be passing similar resolutions. Essentially, what this is really doing is calling out that there are issues with the current processes for identifying and holding accountable vacant and blighted properties. And so it has a number of recommendations and ideas, and the takeaways that we really would like for the council to start looking into this again. Council or Chairman Mendelson has announced already that he is starting a working group. And so one of the recommendations in here is to have a representative, an ANC representative from each ward to sit on that, that working group. As I mentioned, there are a number of things in here, and it really is meant to be a brainstorm activity. We are not experts in this, and so these are things that we are coming up with good research, but it's really to be kind of a brainstorm, starting to think of different things outside of the box. One thing just to kind of highlight, which I think we are really want to try and we think would really impact 1E in particular, is just urging the city to establish processes for providing businesses and homeowners already in the community preference during the tax sale process in order to further support small and local businesses. So I will stop there and ask if there are any questions. Yes, Commissioner Jacobson.
No question. This is just a comment. I'm sorry for being that person. Love the resolution. I've been dealing with a vacant and what several residents think is a blighted property about 5 doors down from me, where they started underpinning and never completed it, and it's been difficult to get DOB to address that. So appreciate you writing or following up on this resolution.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Commissioner Ray, Commissioner Gallagher, I know that we have some people who are interested in speaking to different resolutions. So rather than doing them all at once, I'm going to recommend that we go to the community for each one so that we can have people speak directly to the things that they're interested in. So with that, if there are no other questions from the commission, I will turn to the community. Members of the community, if you have any questions or comments related to our resolution calling for reform of the vacant and blighted property laws and regulations in DC, please raise your hand. Again, if you are calling in rather than joining us on the web, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. All right. Seeing none, members of the commission, if there are no further questions, I'll accept a motion with respect to the resolution calling for reform of the vacant and blighted property laws and regulations in DC.
I make a motion that we adopt the resolution, a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt this resolution as written.
Great. Is there any dissent? All right, hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. Commissioner Ray, back over to you.
Well, the next one was also introduced by you and supported by the committee, and that is the resolution on changing the boundary lines, supporting actually Councilmember Nadeau's suggestion to change the boundary lines. I'll just add, I know you're going to introduce this a little bit better, but the boundary lines right now really follow just Georgia Avenue, and the new boundary lines would expand both east and west, so to include Water Street and Sherman Avenue, and then to make them go further south from Berry Place down to about Florida. But I'll let you do the full introduction. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. So just to introduce it, I wrote some talking points here just to make sure I didn't miss anything. So the topic originated from a letter that Councilmember Nadeau sent to the Department of Small and Local Business Development, and a letter from Shaw Main Street sent in response. We're interested in providing our opinion on this matter after learning that the efforts to expand access to Main Street to tens of small businesses across our commission has been stalled. And so businesses have been asking for this, such as Aurora Market, that was interested in applying for support, but couldn't because they didn't fall within Main Street boundaries. And expanding boundaries will bring tens of businesses into the Main Street area and granting access to program support and other opportunities. We can only weigh in on boundaries within the boundary lines within our ANC, and ANC 1E was specifically designed around Georgia Avenue after years of community advocacy and research. Therefore, it only makes sense that we would want a Main Street focused on Georgia Avenue within our kind of boundary lines. And so the lower Georgia Avenue boundary line that directly impacts my SMD is in line with future developments, or what we're proposing really is in line with some of the things that we've been hearing from Howard University and their intentionality of trying to connect Georgia Avenue to a lot of the developments that they're doing in my SMD specifically. And I'm referring to the Bon Reco building, Lot 3 labs and residential property, and the towers. The developers have given numerous presentations about what they plan to do with the commercial space and how they're making concerted efforts to try and connect it to Georgia Avenue. So, you know, these efforts really are in line with not only the concerted effort from the community in trying to create ANC 1E within the boundary lines the community has been advocating for, but also us following up on the future business plans for trying to connect Georgia Avenue. And that's one additional piece that I want to call out that we talked about in here is that there have been a number of conversations throughout the community about a bid, and we are all very supportive of the idea of a bid in the neighborhood, and there are various ways to go about it, and there are various proposals that are being discussed. While we have no particular, well, I'm not going to speak for the commission yet because we haven't talked about it, but while I personally don't have any opinion on which one is better or anything of that nature, I think it's important to note that the first steps within the process of actually creating a bid is to, one, draw the boundary lines and obtain signed statements in support of the bid formation by the required number of commercial real estate property owners and tenants in that proposed district. It has no bearing whatsoever on any main streets or anything of that nature. The bid is required to draw their map based on their 5-year business proposal plan. And that is what will be taken into consideration when not only DSLBD, but also the council consider a bid proposal. So we feel quite confident that these boundary lines will not impact any conversations around bid formation. So I will stop there and ask if there are any questions, and Commissioner Ray, if there's anything that you want to add based on that.
Thank you. I will a little, only in that, as I said, when I tried to bring this up, that I followed up with the council member on this letter to find out where things stood, mostly because I did know that there were businesses that were interested in being part of a main street, only to hear that it wasn't moving forward because of controversy around the actual borders. And so, and I would certainly say, we're going to hear from folks tonight, but I would love to hear that the Main Street folks get in a room and figure this out, because it needs to move forward. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Great. Any questions from commissioners? All right. Oh, yes.
So have there been any discussions about the fiscal impact of expanding the borders?
I'll take no. I don't think there is, because the main streets get a set amount. So unfortunately, this doesn't necessarily mean that the Main Street gets more money. So it would all remain within the Lower Georgia Avenue. But I don't believe that there is a fiscal impact. Maybe we'll hear differently from the executive director. But I don't believe there would be a fiscal impact, given that they would get the same amount of funding regardless of its size. It would have impact on grant opportunities, but those grant opportunities, though, are funded at the grant level. So if there's a $5 million cap on total grants, it's still the same $5 million. It's just more competition for their services.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, we will turn to the community. Members of the community, if you are interested in making a comment, or if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Again, if you are calling in rather than joining us via web, you can signify, or you can raise your hand by dialing *9. I see that we have a hand up from Alexander Pedro. So if we could bring Alexander Pedro up to panelist. All right. Commissioner Pedro, thank you for joining us. I know that you probably have something that you would like to present, and if you are interested in sharing your screen, I'm happy to stop sharing, but you have 5 minutes.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, if I could share my screen, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, and I won't start the clock until I stop sharing, and I'll wait till you start sharing too. Are you able to share your screen?
He likely had to even rejoin once he was promoted to panelist.
There we are. Commissioner Pedro, you are on mute. There you go.
Yeah, it unfortunately looked like it took a couple of seconds to transfer over after the panelist. So thank you very much, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. So as previously noted, I am Alexander Pedro. I am the executive director of Shaw Main Streets. I have been associated with the organization since its designation as a DC Main Streets program back in 2003, initially as the board chair and subsequently as the executive director of the organization. And as noted in your draft resolution, Shaw Main Street's boundaries have expanded twice in order for us to be able to deliver services to areas, Lower Georgia Avenue as well as U Street, that were bereft of those services because there was no Main Street program at the time. We initially were providing services without any district government funds because we were restricted from doing that until those boundary changes effective. We use private funds in order to be able to do that initially, and then subsequently to extend the full benefits and services that the District of Columbia provides funding for. So we do think that it is unfortunate that this resolution was drafted without our ability to have dialogue with members of the committee. We certainly would have been able to participate if we had been advised that the resolution was being developed and was being discussed by the committee, but we had no knowledge of the resolution until we found out inadvertently that the resolution would be taken up by this commission at this meeting this evening. So the chairman did provide a copy of that last Friday. But nonetheless, I shared this document with all of you earlier today, but just wanted to use it as the framework for our presentation. So as has been described, there is a portion of our service area, some blocks that have been within Shaw Main Street's original service area going back to 2003 that are proposed to be shifted out of our control and into the management of two Main Street organizations that are controlled by district bridges. And in the instance of ANC 1E, this is specifically Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street. So a couple of things that we'd like to note about the model that District Bridges uses in terms of providing Main Street services. Unfortunately, District Bridges does not provide boards that are responsible to the local programs to make decisions. Instead, they have advisory committees that only can make recommendations to the District Bridges board. So at the grassroots level, there are recommendations being made, but no decision making is made in terms of work plans, in terms of budgets, and indeed, those individual Main Streets have to raise money for District Bridges. This is unique in the United States. Out of the approximately 1,600 Main Street organizations throughout the country, only the 6 Main Streets that are managed by District Bridges have a very unusual and not recommended format. So I did want to share that as a major distinction between Shaw Main Streets, which has 6 Ward 1 stakeholders on our board that make all the decisions for our Main Street organization. In addition, leadership turnover has been a major issue for District Bridges. Unfortunately, have had about an 85% turnover in the past 3 years of Main Street directors throughout District Bridges. So very concerning. In terms of length of service, I am the second longest serving Main Street director. So with that having said, we'll skip. Obviously, we have no concern and no objection to the proposal to transfer or add to the areas of Lower Georgia Avenue's service area north of Berry Place, which has been our northern boundary since 2017. We're only concerned about the area to the south and as far along Florida Avenue as 6th Street, because that again has been the area where we have been providing intensive services and making grants and helping to those businesses survive throughout the pandemic, all through these many years. One of the points that was made was that the expansion of the boundaries would allow businesses to be able to take advantage of funding opportunities and services that they currently do not. And while that would be the case north of Berry Place and the area that we would be losing, all of those same grants and services are currently provided by Shaw Main Street. So there would not be any additional services or funding options, opportunities that would accrue to the businesses in that particular part of the area. So Shaw Main Street is the most recognized and awarded Main Street program in the entire United States. We are the only winners of both the Great American Main Street Award and the Innovation Main Street, both conveyed by the National Main Street Center, which is part of the National Trust for Coordination. We have been responsible for helping to channel approximately $3.5 billion in public and private investment in the neighborhood, attracting and supporting over 400 new, mostly small independent businesses to our neighborhood. Sadly, we did lose about 33 businesses during the pandemic for a number of reasons that should be very obvious to the commission. But we're able to retain the vast majority. We helped to launch the Clean Team concept back in 2006, which is now active in 40 neighborhoods. And we now serve 3 major corridors in the neighborhood, 7th and 9th, as well as 11th Street. We've raised over $1 million in private funds to leverage the grants that we get from this government. We've been very active in creating new public art in the neighborhood, 7 major public art projects. Currently, we conduct events that all of our businesses are able to participate in, including Art All Night, which we founded back in 2011, which is now active in 25 different district neighborhoods, Shaw Open House, Shaw Small Business Saturday, some of the
Commissioner Pedro, yes. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I think we're a little bit over time. I want to give you another like 30 seconds, because I know this last point is probably one of the more important ones that you're interested in. So another like 30 seconds, please.
Yes. So in terms of financial impact on our organization, we estimate that in 10 years after losing the areas that are proposed to be transferred from us, over $1 million in private sector contributions would be lost to us. And in terms of the bid, and we're talking about a very unique construction, first in DC, but not in the nation, where the bid would also be a main street. So it's a hybrid. We would lose about $6.5 million over 10 years in bid taxes, which would basically make the bid unviable and cripple our organization. So thank you for the opportunity to present, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And I also believe that our board chair, Richard Wharton, is also on the line, and she would be unmuted in case she would want to answer any questions. Of course, I appreciate it, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions? I see Commissioner Ray.
Thank you. And thanks again, Director, for coming to give us your thoughts on this. I do have a question around, these are competitively awarded main streets. How often are they reconsidered for competition? Because, and I'll give you where I'm going with this. Our resolution is really specific about boundary lines. So I'm not thinking about it in terms of it's the Shaw versus the Lower Georgia Avenue. I'm thinking that, we've got boundary lines that where they make sense. And then whoever runs those, could be District Bridges, it could be Shaw Main Streets, it could be another organization in the future. How does that work going forward?
So currently there is no recompetition of Main Street designations unless a Main Street withdraws as the manager for a specific grant. So we were selected in 2003, and we continue to operate. There has been some discussion. There was an Inspector General's report that was issued earlier this year, where some recommendations were made in terms of some limited recompetition in the future, but the District Department of Small Local Business Development has not advanced any concepts along this line.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Commissioner or Director, however you like to be preferred. I appreciate you joining us today. So we will put you back in the attendees group, and I'll go back to the community, members of the community. If you have any comments or questions with respect to the resolution around Main Street, please signify by raising your hand. All right, seeing no other comments from the community, I will come back to commissioners. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Commissioner Ray?
Yeah, sorry, I was looking for my hand there.
Yeah.
I was giving a minute or two for people to ask if they do have a question. So I'll just say, given the presentations that we've heard, I still believe that we're on the right path. I'll go back to the committee meetings. Unfortunately, Patrick Nelson and Tony, I'm sorry, blanking on Tony's last name.
Norman,
thank
Tony,
you.
no.
Thank you. They were very involved in the creation of the Main Street in the first place. They were very involved in all the work that we've been doing with Howard University, and they've been very involved in getting a Georgia Avenue centric ANC formed, which they wanted to do 10 years ago, and they stuck it out and they waited and they got one here this last year. So I'm looking at it in terms of what boundaries make the most sense. And I still believe that having all of Lower Georgia Avenue in one Main Street, it does make a lot of sense. Now, who ends up managing those contracts and getting that work and being able to then form their bids, that's a discussion that is going to happen beyond us. But I still believe that it makes more sense to change to expand the boundaries in the northern end, because we have businesses that are ineligible, and then two, to draw the lines where it does make sense to get some focus on Lower Georgia Avenue, which I am of the opinion, and I think many of you agree, that Georgia Avenue has not seen the kind of economic development that it should have over the last, I've been in the community for 16 years. I would expect us to have been a little further along than we are these days. So, even given some of the points that the executive director made about the management of the Main Street, that the RZ committee should probably be looking a little more stringently at that, because we do see that there's a lag in the way some of these things are happening. But I'm more focused on what makes the most sense for the map, and which is why I'll still support the resolution as we have written it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, I'll now accept a motion respect to resolution in support of the proposed boundary lines for Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street. Do I have a motion?
Secretary Jacobson has this down, if you could.
Okay, sorry, I'll do it. I just wanted to give someone else the opportunity. I make a motion with unanimous consent to pass the resolution as written.
Is there any dissent? All right, hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, next I'm going to pull the agenda up, and we have one more resolution under zoning and economic development. Commissioner Gallagher.
Sorry, also having trouble unmuting. Yeah, this is more of preemptive concept rather than I think something that's quite far along, but it came to this body's attention recently that a liquor store that currently has a license to sell liquor located in our area is relocating, and as such, substantial change in the premises triggers our ability to weigh in on certain aspects of the liquor store's ability to do, or way of doing business, I should say. So in this case, I would like to propose that this body preemptively protest the liquor license on the grounds of, quote, peace, order, and quiet, which falls under our purview as ANC. The holders of this, I should say, actually, I'm trying to do some investigative work. I've been talking with my predecessor as ANC, who worked on this about 10, 12 years ago, trying to determine whether these are the same owners, whether they're new owners from an existing liquor store that's recently renovated and is looking to move a few doors down and kind of separate a food service from its liquor operations. So the store currently has had a history of violations, including selling liquor to minors. It's a block from my house, and I witness people who are clearly inebriated or drug users hanging out at the location. So I'd like to propose that on a preliminary basis, we protest, and should the owners be willing to work with this body, we can be more specific about what we'd actually like to see in terms of a settlement agreement. But the date's quickly approaching, and we only learned about this recently. So just in general terms, I'd like to motion for a protest in this case. Happy to take any questions or receive any comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
How can they transfer their liquor license to a new location?
That's
You want to take that? Sorry.
actually, Commissioner Ray, you, I think, are much more versed on this issue than I.
Yeah. So if you, and Commissioner, you have a copy of the posting. So effectively, what they're changing, it's a change of address. So the license remains the same. There's no change in the hours of operation or how it's just that they're moving from one location to another. You may recall that this happened with Petworth Liquors during your time. That was quite the controversial one. So it is doable. Transfers are allowed within the zone, but it is an opportunity to ask more questions.
And if I can just add on to that, from my understanding and reading through some of the ABCA rules, that when you do a transfer to a new property, that the board, I believe, has the ability to wipe out any established settlement agreements, or that settlement agreements don't actually carry over to the new property. And so it's important to note that there is no settlement agreement that is part of this, and we're not losing the settlement agreement, but that there have been, we asked for the history of violations and kind of the history of this particular license, and there have been noted from ABCA a number of things, including a very lengthy motion from the board restricting some activities and requiring them to do certain things, even in the absence of a settlement agreement. So I think it further kind of supports the idea that there's a level of scrutiny that is required of us on this, and we need more time.
So there have been violations.
Yes.
Yeah, and there have been violations associated with, I guess, the DBA, or doing business as entity WNS. And so I'm trying to figure out, guilty until proven innocent, and people can change over time and learn from past mistakes, and don't want to punish folks for issues that they've corrected since. But I'm kind of trying to understand the ownership structure here, whether these are the same owners or have they passed to new folks, because they have renovated their building. I think they made some physical improvements. I'd like to see some of the non-physical issues taken care of a bit better. But to be honest, I've walked by this location many times after 7 p.m. and or on Sundays, and construction has been going on in what I believe is a violation of some of the building regulations that don't allow construction after 7 p.m. or on Sundays. So if that's any indication of the way this business is doing business, I feel like it becomes necessary for this body to protest, at least preliminarily. Also, the hours are from 7 a.m. until midnight. And I think, as we all know, I think between 10 p.m. and midnight, we've probably all wanted to buy alcohol somewhere and not been able to. But 7 a.m. seems to correspond with use of substances other than alcohol, in large part on Georgia Avenue. And so that in particular concerns me in this case. To be clear, it's the synthetic cannabinoid issue. I mean, you can tell when different types of drugs or different formulations have been used. Sorry, as a counter narcotics person by day, it's quite clear that some businesses on Georgia Avenue are illegally selling synthetic cannabinoids to folks, not alleging that it's this business, but some of the sales do seem to take place in that kind of 7 a.m. hour when one would not probably otherwise be going to a liquor store.
Commissioner Ray?
Mine is, I think it's a comment. You know, I certainly can support that we are doing this preemptively with the notion of coming up with what the community concerns are going to be specifically, and then coming up with a settlement agreement. I mean, I think we have to recognize, however, that, you know, this is an established business, that it's very unlikely that the board is going to not let them transfer. And that we should be cautious too, that the board is going to view this more as what are the differences between when it operated on the corner versus when it operates in this new central location and literally in the same building. So, you know, their location is not likely to generate anything specific that we would be able to kind of hang a settlement agreement on. But if there are violations that have been going on and they simply have been unaddressed, you know, this would certainly be an opportunity to try to do that. But I think, you know, coming up with a settlement agreement terms that are not already covered by the regulation is, you know, going to be harder as well. So I don't envy you, Commissioner Gallagher. I think this is going to be a hard one to walk, but I'm happy to help you, you know, traverse this as best I can if you need my support.
I do want to just point out, I pulled up the placard, and the protest petition deadline is August 21st. So clearly this is the time that we need to pass this so that we can file in time. But the roll call hearing is on September 11th. And so most likely we will need to attend the roll call hearing just to maintain standing. Because even if we did put a settlement agreement together, we would not be able to pass it until our September meeting, which would be at the end of September after the roll call hearing itself. So Commissioner Gallagher, I know that daytime is a little bit more difficult for you to get out of work. And in the resolution here, it does designate you as the point of contact or your designee. And so as we get closer, if you want to articulate who that designee may be, you know, we can work with you to figure out if somebody is able to do September 11th. But I just want to point that out, that we'll need to coordinate a little bit around having to go to the roll call hearing.
Sure, that's great. Thanks, Chair Footer, appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, any other questions? All right. We will turn to the community. Members of the community, if you have any questions or comments with respect to the resolution protesting W&S Liquor and Delis request to transfer their license to a new location, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none. If there are no other questions, I'll now accept a motion with respect to resolution protesting W&S Liquor and Delis request to transfer their license to a new location.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the resolution as written.
All right, is there any dissent? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. All right, thank you. Commissioner Gallagher, anything else you want to say in closing?
Just to reiterate that the Zoning and Economic Development Committee will next meet on August 9th at 7 p.m. and details can be found on our website at anc1e.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next we will go to Public Safety and Engagement Committee, and Chair recognizes Commissioner Newland.
Thank you, Chair Footer. So we have two items for consideration this evening. The first one is a resolution around the emergency legislation that the DC Council passed, the mayor signed, focused on public safety. So just briefly giving an overview of the resolution, recognizing, you know, recent rise in crime, particularly of the violent type, and also recognizing that the council won't be able to consider legislation for the next 2 months while they're on their break, as the designee from the council member's office noted earlier. We commend the council member Pinto, the council, and the mayor for offering up legislation and signing it that focuses on public safety over the next 2 months, but also recognizing that because it's emergency, it's only 90 days. And we also do register concerns around the effectiveness of detaining people prior to trial. And that is one of the aspects that is a part of the emergency legislation. So we do commend everybody for taking action on this and focusing on the issue, but also calling for permanent public safety legislation that recognizes people's due process rights when it comes to being detained before a trial. So that's just a brief overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And I do think it's important to note that this was discussed in the Public Safety Committee, but we did not hold a formal vote on it because it was the day before I think the council was considering it. So it's been revised significantly.
Commissioner Ray.
I've got comments on everything that I do. No, this is I support the resolution. I actually support the emergency legislation that the council put in place. But that being said, I know there's been some controversy over the pretrial detention portion, and so I'm wondering, because I'm hoping maybe that Commissioner Newland knows this better than I, but there was some question about the numbers, how many people, actually so far this year had committed violent crimes versus nonviolent crimes, whether it was 100, whether it was less. There was a certain number of people who had committed actual murders while on pretrial release. Do you have anything more specific on that in the interim, or are you in the same place I am, which is a little fuzzy?
I would say it's more of the latter, because the citation that we have here from the Pretrial Services Agency, I think that was a report from the previous year, so it doesn't speak to the most recent. That was the most recent, I think, available, but it wasn't like within the last year. So I would say, yeah, I'm also kind of in that same spot.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you for including the clause around the pretrial measures. My understanding from the reporting is that the population released pretrial isn't that much more likely to commit crimes than the general population while they're out on before the trial. So making sure that we are doing the right thing there is appropriate. I'm glad that we have that whereas clause in there.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I will turn to the community. Members of the community, if you have any questions or comments with respect to the resolution, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none. Commissioners, if there are no other questions or comments, then I will accept a motion with respect to the resolution in support of the DC Council Emergency Public Safety Legislation.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the resolution as written.
Is there any dissent? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. Commissioner Newland, next resolution.
Yeah, thank you. Second one is a brief resolution in support of a sponsorship request. I think we've talked about this before. We filled out the actual application, but also put it into resolution form. So the sponsorship request is for an upcoming event. It's happening September 23rd. It's going to be the 11th annual Hoop for Hope event. So it's a basketball tournament. They basically raise awareness around cancer and other health issues and offer free public health resources. And I think an additional bonus, and in addition to that, probably more important work, we do have the opportunity to have a physical presence at the event. So just connecting with the community as an ANC. But they are requesting $500. And this resolution is in support of us providing that for them. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Ray.
So this is more as treasurer. I just wanted to confirm, we got $500 here. Did I see 1,000 written into the, maybe I'm thinking of the resolution on speed. What's the number that's on the agenda, please? If you can show me the agenda topic.
You are right that one of them says 1,000. It's the resolution from transportation with respect to the booting.
So I'm just making sure if we could, before we pass this, just double check that on the agenda for this evening, that it also mentions the amount for that what we pass. We'll want that to be in the minutes that we passed. Yeah, sponsorship. Yeah, up for $500. Just include that in the final.
Is that necessary, considering that we're actually doing a resolution that says 500?
I will say it this way. Dawn is going to look at the minutes. I will certainly include the resolution in the folder, but that's going to be the first place she looks when double checking that we've done everything correctly. So I would just want to make sure that the minutes reflect that we passed this with a $500 amount. I should have noticed that before, but you know what? It's that $1,000 on the speeding tickets that I kept seeing.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobson.
Yeah, and a couple of things. I think the $1,000 confusion is probably because they initially asked for $1,000, and we know that there are several groups that will be asking this year, and we have limited funds for sponsorships. So we wanted to make sure we were able to divide that resource up. Is it going to be an issue that the meeting minutes technically won't be approved until our September meeting, or is the draft meeting minutes fine for Dawn? Do you know, Commissioner Ray?
We're in a new quarter, so we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Awesome. The only thing on, well, my only question is more around coordinating to get banner, logo, all that stuff. Commissioner Newland, you'll be the point of contact for making sure that he gets all of that. And then as a commission, we should just coordinate on like who's going to go to this, what materials we want to have. This is very close to the Open Streets event. And so maybe we can kind of repeat some measures or activities that we're doing and do that here.
Yeah, just confirming I'll be the point of contact for the collateral, and yes, as we're spending time in August talking about Open Streets, we can make sure we hit on this as well.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions? Commissioner Gallagher. You are on mute.
Sorry, hard time today. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. Where is this event being hosted?
Oh, it's at I believe it's at Banneker, right?
Yeah, it's
right,
at
Commissioner Jacobson. Yeah.
Maybe we should add that in here somewhere. Cancer Awareness Basketball Tournament hosted at Banneker or something. Oh yeah, the healthcare resources at the Banneker event.
The BANNEKER. What's the official name? Banneker. Commissioner Ray, you're
Recreation Center, Banneker Recreation Center, is that the title?
Yes.
Why don't you say in 1E, just to be clear? There you go. It's within our boundaries.
right. Any other questions, comments? All right, hearing none, I will turn to the public. Members of the public, if you have any questions or comments with respect to the resolution, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none. If there are no other questions, I'll take a motion with respect to sponsorship application for the 11th annual Hoop for Hope Cancer Awareness Tournament in the amount of $500.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the resolution as written and award the $500 grant to Hoop for Hope.
Thank you. Is there any dissent? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. Right, going back to the agenda, Commissioner Newland.
Yeah, just in closing, confirming that this committee is also off in August. So our next meeting will be Monday, September 11th at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Commissioner Footer, Chair Footer, I would double check on those resolutions. I noted in the header, it looks like your email address might be cut off. Just something you can look at in the future.
You are right, thank you. I will go back and correct that. All right, well, with no other business and before I give my spiel about the next meeting and next cow and what we're doing in August, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion with a unanimous consent that we adjourn until the next general meeting on Wednesday, September 27th, 2023.
Stealing my thunder there. All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there any, did you say with unanimous consent?
Yes.
Okay, is there any dissent? I should dissent just because you stole my thunder. Kidding. Are you dissenting on your own motion? What?
I thought you asked for a motion there. Maybe I misheard you.
Before my spiel. All right, with no dissent, the motion passes and we are adjourned. Please note that ANC 1E will not have a general public meeting in August. The next general meeting of ANC 1E is Wednesday, September 27th, and the Committee of the Whole, otherwise known as COW, will be on Tuesday, September 19th. The next general meeting will be a hybrid in-person meeting, and more details and announcements about our meetings and committee meetings can be found at anc1e.org. Please feel free to contact any commissioner with any questions. Thank you very much for a great meeting and have a great night.
Good to see everyone.
Thanks all. And Josh, I will put all of the